Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to our play-by-email series against XTRG, playing the game War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition. We're into late January of 1942. The Japanese are launching some offensives in the South China, or not South China, in the South Pacific. There's some interesting questions on where some task forces of theirs are going to go this turn, whether some of our light carriers can do anything about it, and whether they end up taking the island of New Caledonia, which they have a strong foothold and have been attacking pretty consistently, but have not yet overrun our troops at the southern tip of the island. And as long as we hold that island, the longer it's going to take for him to be able to use that against us and against Australia. Now, we did just engage a Japanese destroyer near the island of Raoul. I think that's how you pronounce it, Raoul. It looked like we had spotted a task force that was moving toward this island, and we thought it was surface ships, and we had a couple of destroyers in the region doing some anti-submarine warfare patrols, and it looks like they are engaging the Japanese destroyer Amagari in a surface battle at night near Raoul Island. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully our destroyers give a good account of themselves, because I can only assume the reason he has a destroyer where he does is because he has some sort of small landing force trying to take the island. And if he does take this island, that will very effectively cut New Zealand off should he be able to get any actual ships nearby. Or any aircraft, sorry. If he bases any aircraft off Raoul Island, we were kind of screwed. It's a dot base, so it would take a lot to be able to do that, but nonetheless, we need to hold this island and prevent him from taking it. Granted, it would be a small force just holding on one destroyer, but still, it's not easy to retake stuff at this phase of the war for the Allies. Good news is the Japanese destroyer took one shell hit. We didn't take any. We inflicted 50 casualties on him by those hits. And it looks like our anti-submarine warfare task force is withdrawing after combat. So hopefully his destroyer task force doesn't press forward here and land troops. Yeah, that's a modern destroyer, isn't it? That's a Hibiki class, right? Or Hibiki, or however you pronounce that. That's one of his best destroyer classes, isn't it? Seems a little bit reckless for him to put that all the way out there by Raoul. Okay. No, I think it's a HIB, not Fubuki. It looks modern, yeah. It doesn't look like the old 4-stacks. But those are more Americans. I don't really know what the old Japanese destroyers look like. Alright, so we got some anti-submarine warfare stuff happening off the coast of Brunei, near Mary. We've got some more ASW stuff happening south of Sakhalin. All right. Okay, so we had also dispatched 2 heavy cruisers and a destroyer against toward New Zealand in a surface task force, and it looks like they're engaging the Japanese destroyer as well. He must have pulled his destroyer back. They must have withdrawn after taking the damage they took without actually landing on the island. I didn't see anything about them landing on the island. So now, as long as we avoid any torpedoes, we should be able to finish this guy off good. You're ready for a swordfish strike to take out the Yamato? I doubt that'll happen. Amagari is a Fubuki class. Okay, so Wikipedia says it's a Fubuki. Well, the Fubuki is dying. Just took an 8-inch shell hit. Explosion. Serious damage. The Minneapolis and the Pensacola. Pensacola's smoking a little bit. I didn't see if she took a hit. And then we've got an old 4-stack destroyer of the Kitty. Okay. So Japanese, let's fast forward through this a little bit. I haven't seen any torpedoes fired by him yet, which is good. I think he fired some in the destroyer combat that we saw, so maybe he used his torpedoes up on us previously. That would be great if he used his torpedoes against destroyers and not against cruisers where they might actually do serious damage. In any event, things look like they're going well. Nice. All right, so 7 shell hits. The Amagari is sunk. So we sank a Japanese destroyer. 80 casualties for the Japanese. 8 squads destroyed. 130 casualties between the 2 combat roles. 1 shell hit of insignificant penetration against the Pensacola heavy cruiser. And so this cruiser task force of ours that was on their way to New Zealand intercepts and destroys this Japanese destroyer force near Raoul Island. And it doesn't look like they got any troops ashore. So we just stymied a Japanese landing and a Japanese invasion, I'm assuming. That's good for us. That's very good, and maybe that'll make him think twice. And that's one of his best destroyer classes, so that really hurts when it comes to anti-submarine warfare patrols, when it comes to torpedo attacks in future surface engagements. He's lost 4 or 5 destroyers already. He's pretty reckless at this stage with his destroyers. And if this war does get extended, if he doesn't win an auto victory in 42, these losses are going to come back to bite him, and they're going to hurt pretty bad. So that's a very good win for us. I think it's worth like 6 or 7 victory points, which again is nice. Looks like we're going to have a major air battle over Singapore, so as you remember, we did set our cap to about 70%. We are going to outnumber him. I think I saw 20 Buffaloes and 20 Hurricanes, and also maybe like 10 H-81 Flying Tigers against 42 Zeros. Now, it doesn't look like all those aircraft are up in the air yet. Looks like we've got 27 Warhawks and Buffaloes, brings us to 36, and then 48. So we do outnumber them, but it's pretty close to 1-to-1 odds. Japanese aircraft are obviously vastly superior, and this is going to be a big-time aerial engagement against Japanese Zeros over Singapore. The good thing is Singapore is still Allied held, so any planes that are shot down over Singapore should result in either KIA or prisoners of war for the Japanese pilots, which will rapidly deplete his pilot training pool, hopefully, if he loses a lot of casualties. But we are losing a fair number of aircraft here early ourselves, so we'll see if he finally asserts his dominance in air combat over Singapore, or whether we can give him a bit of a bloody nose. And we'll see here shortly. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through the combat, though, because this is a big air battle, and it's going to take a while, and his Zeros are diving on us, so that's fun. Okay, so that battle is over. It looks like we engaged with 46, 55, 60, 70 aircraft versus his 42. We destroyed 6 Zeros, so that's very nice. We lost 9 aircraft of our own. I will take that every day of the week, and twice on Sundays, 6 to 9. He got 3 more aircraft than ours, but 5 of those aircraft he got were Buffaloes, which suck. We only lost 1 Hurricane. We lost 3 Warhawks. Those are the good aircraft. So we lost 4 good aircraft to his 6. Presumably also those pilots had a fair chance to bail out, where his own pilots presumably were destroyed. So very good result of air combat here in the AM phase in a sweep over Singapore. Another sweep. Fuck. He's got to have at least 90 Zeros then in the Singapore region. That is a lot of fucking fighters, and our fighter cap is pretty depleted, so I don't think this combat's going to go quite as well with that many more fighters. Yeah, let's fast forward and let's see what happens. How did this one go? Well, that didn't go quite as well. We lost 4 Hurricanes. Those are good aircraft. We lost 2 Warhawks. Those are good aircraft. We lost 1 H-81. That's also a good aircraft. So we lost 7 good aircraft, 2 more Buffaloes, 9 total versus 3 of his own. 3-to-1 casualties definitely favors him, and 43 aircraft. So he's got to have, these are both in the AM phase, so he's got to have almost 90 fighter aircraft able to sweep over Singapore. All of the Zero variety. That's quite a strong air arsenal. I'm really curious to see what the actual estimates of losses are once we get out of the turn, because usually the actual air combat results are underreported when it comes to the what you see on the screen versus what you see reported after the battle. So it looks like they're bombing Bataan still. 4 runway hits, no supply hits, 4 Lilies damage, 1 destroyed by flak. We're bombing some Japanese troops south of Wuchao. We've got 7 bombers there, doing a little bit of damage to the enemy. Another 2 coming in here. More casualties. We've got a couple of DO somethings, some Dutch bombers. 24 of them are coming in against Japanese ships here at Kendari. It looks like there's a troop transport at Kendari. We dropped bombs but did not hit it from 6,000 feet. 2 300-kilogram bombs, no damage. They did get in under the cap, though. Meanwhile, his light carrier force is launching an air raid with 4 B-5N1 Kates. against our AVP Bellatrix, which was pulling back from Ternate. A couple of bomb hits. These guys are doing very good. 2 hits out of 4 drop. That's a very effective attack, and the Bellatrix sinks. That's a very small ship, not worth very much, but kind of sucks nonetheless. Jack, we'll have to take a look at what our anti-aircraft strength is at Singapore after the turn. I can't look at it right now. So he does have aircraft set to naval attack over Manila, which may mean that, or over Bataan, which may mean that we may not be able to continue to bring supplies in there, depending if he continues to keep those guys on naval attack or not. We'll try. We'll just probably get sunk. More bombing of Wencao. We'll go ahead and fast forward through that. No actual losses, so that's a good result for me. Another raid, another 10 Sallies coming into Wencao. 7 casualties. Nothing destroyed, though. Just damaged. Another raid of Sallies. That's 3 Sally raids, about 30 bombers in total. Again, nothing destroyed, just disabled. Another Sally. He came in really fragmented. He did not coordinate his strikes well here. Okay, so we've got more DOs coming in against this convoy here. It looks like 12 fighter aircraft providing cap over top. The DOs are shot down before they can close the range. Yeah, I haven't lost any AA guns yet, Jack, so whatever starts in Malaya is in Singapore now. Oh, fuck. So I had 8 swordfish with the Hornet, with the Hermes over here. We had ordered them to go on a naval strike, but I had a bunch of aircraft at Mascar that I thought would provide combat air patrol. If we had 30 fighters escorting the swordfish, we might have gotten a few through, but now he's going to have 8 fighters against 8, or 12 fighters against 8 swordfish with no escorts. These guys are goners. I swear, I thought these guys would have gotten escorted from Mascar. This is the problem with the Hermes. It doesn't have its own fighter wing on the carrier, which means that when you send strikes in, it can be very difficult to coordinate. And because you're sending in biplanes, they're sitting ducks if you don't get the coordination right. And it doesn't look like we did, and we lost all 8 swordfish there. So we just had our carrier wing decimated. 8 swordfish. The report here says 6 swordfish. Destroyed, not a single bomb on target. The Zuho's A6M20s and the Rougeau's A6M20s and the it looks like a land-based detachment of Zeros as well. So they have up-armored their light carrier force with a lot of aircraft there. And unfortunately, we just basically shot the Hermes only bolt, and we have no chance with the Hermes now. We got to run away with it and hope it can escape. Yeah, it was cap, but we didn't have... No, I set them to escort, not cap. I set them to cap too, so I gave them dual orders. I had like 50% of them set to cap and like 50% set to escort. But they were land-based, so they must not have... But I mean, the aircraft that we set were based at a land base, and they were Dutch, and they're assigned to a different headquarters. So it can be difficult to make sure that you actually, like, if units in a different hex may not pick up escorted raids from a hex a few away. Okay, so we've got some depth charging going on here. We'll fast forward through this. Triton takes a hit off Raoul. More Japanese. Ooh, there's an oiler there. And a bunch of a couple of troop transports, cargo ships, some destroyers, some AMCs. This is a pretty valuable convoy in here in Raoul. Probably the force that brought in the division there. Meanwhile, the Dutch sub here fires at a Japanese cargo ship and does nothing. Good for you, sir. The Triton firing against Japanese destroyer, doing nothing. Amphibious landing off Kendari. So we've got this force that we had launched our airstrike against. Pressed through. and are now landing at Celebes, which is going to be very bad for us. If he takes Kendari and Manadao, that's going to shut down the Banda Sea, the Serum Sea. It's going to basically cut off the Dutch East Indies, and everything else will rapidly fall after that. It'll take some time, but it will occur. It looks like 80 casualties in the landing, 35 defenders. Doesn't really say what the unit strength was. We'll probably see what's landing. 375 casualties, 15 squads destroyed? Wow. He lost a lot of squads destroyed. Ah, crap. This is at the 4th Japanese Army Division. So he's landing he landed a full division at Raoul. Now he's landing a full division at Celebes. But it looks like they had some serious damage suffered landing. 375 men lost just to accidents, not to actual combat? Jeez. He must not have had them adequately prepared, because if you land troops when they're like in strategic mode, or you land them when they're not actually prepared for amphibious landings, then you can suffer huge casualties. And we didn't shoot anything at him, but we got 17 victory points because he just died in the surf. I mean, we could put American air wings on the Hermes, but I don't think it would do much good. We don't really have much in the way of carrier air wings to spare anyway. All right, so more bombardment attacks at Changsha. We'll go ahead and fast forward here. Japanese lost 2 guns in counter battery fire. We lost a fair number of troops there. Deliberate attack at Nomaya, so he's probably going to overrun us here. We've only got 36 squads in the 4th Australian Battalion. He's got over 57 in the 8th Tank Regiment. So go ahead and fast forward here. Wow, he didn't take Nomaya yet. So 1-to-1 odds, that definitely favored him. He lost 561 more men. We lost 624. The key here is we lost 40 squads destroyed and 42 disabled, so 82 total combat versus his 38, and only 2 of his were destroyed. But nonetheless, that's like 3 or 4 days in a row. He did reduce the fortifications to 0, but that's like 3 or 4 days in a row where he attacks at Nomaya and fails to take the base. Now, presumably with level 0 forts, he will take the base tomorrow, but I have to imagine he's used up, like he started with over 400 assault value. He's down to 267, and he lost another probably 40 or so in this attack in terms of his combat value. So, I mean, he's basically, his troops are down to half strength. It's going to take a couple of weeks for those guys to get all of their preparation and their troops back to strength. So once the base does fall, the troops that he did use will be, to some extent, combat ineffective for a period of time. He originally started with over 12,000 attackers. He's down to 10,800, and again, highly disrupted forces. It'll be interesting to see if he keeps pressing the attack. At one of these days, the base will fall. But if he keeps pressing the attack, I mean, he may even wreck his troops worse. So we'll see. Bombardment attack at Wenkao again. No actual combat there. Some casualties on the Japanese end. Nothing on our defenders' end. Bombardment attack at Kendari. Our troops are bombarding his full division. He'll obviously merge all these units into a single 4th division there. Over 400 assault value per Japanese division usually. That's 390. Might be reduced because they lost 375 men in the landing. And that'll probably about do it for the combat results. So, I mean, not a disastrous turn. We'll have to take a look and see what happened at Singapore. At the very least, I think we give him a bit of a bloody nose, although he may have broken the back of our fighter resistance. We'll have to see. We did have 1 squadron that wasn't deployed, the P-39s. And then, because they're not really ready yet, they're trying to get up and ready. Yeah, I can't compete with 80 zeros. Still, hopefully we give him a bit of a bloody nose from like a shot down perspective. Anyway, it's going to end the turn here, so we're just going to jump out, and then we'll jump back in when we get through the save. All right, and we're back. First things first, let's take a look at our losses last turn. So it looks like there were 3,335 Japanese sorties last turn versus 2,500 Allied sorties. Wow. We lost 41 air-to-air casualties versus only 14 Japanese air-to-air casualties. That air combat went much poorer than I think we had thought. Meanwhile, no aircraft destroyed on the field, 2 by flak for them, 0 by flak for us, 14 op losses for us, 10 for the Japanese. So let's take a look and see what that's actually made of. We can see, oh, okay, so it's not all bad news. So we can see 55 air losses to 26 of ours. These are claimed figures, by the way. Remember, fog of war matters. But 55 Allied aircraft losses to 26 of his. So that in of itself is bad, right? 2-1 in his favor. The positive side of that is, however, that of his aircraft, 25 of the lost aircraft were zeros. 15 in air-to-air combat, which doesn't match up with the previous screen that said 14, but it's saying 15 air-to-air combat, 10 ops losses. So we might have only shot down 14 or 15 over Singapore itself, but at least 10 crashed either on their way back to their bases after fighting in Singapore, or potentially some of the aircraft that are operating in the Dutch East India area may have been, I think we saw at least one squadron of them was land-based aircraft flying off carriers. Land-based aircraft flying off carriers results in a lot of pilots dying when they land because they're not really trained for it. They might have planes that are capable of landing, but you get really high ops losses in those units. So in any event, 25 zeros being destroyed in a single day is a huge victory. He probably makes about 3 or 4 zeros a day. Based on my understanding of Japanese production. He might be able to scale that up to 5 or 6, but in any event, this is clearly, almost a week worth of production is what I would guess of zeros destroyed, not to mention the, 12 to 13 pilots that he probably lost as well. Our losses are buoyed by the fact that they're not all fighters and they're not all important aircraft. And I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings who love the biplanes, because the Swordfish is a tremendous aircraft. But losing the Swordfish doesn't impact our ability to win an air war in the Pacific. It does impact our ability to sting the Japanese when they overreach, but it really doesn't impact the war effort as a whole. So 8 of our aircraft lost were the Swordfish. If you take those out of the equation, it's 47 to 26 in terms of aircraft loss. Let's see here. This doesn't add up either, because it says 26 here, it says 25 here, but then there's 1 Lily, 1 Nate, 1 Sally, like that. None of this adds up. But in any event, 12 Hurricanes lost. That'll hurt. Those are over Singapore. Those are probably our best fighters available right now. 17 Buffaloes. Those are kind of crappy aircraft, but they're still crates. They're still pilots. 9 Warhawks. That'll hurt as well. 5 H-81s. That'll hurt. But that's kind of the situation right now. Now, if we take a look at the actual pilot losses, the good news is we didn't lose a single one of our aces, and actually we might have created a new ace. Looks like we've got 8 aces now, all with 5 kills with one exception of a guy who has 6. All of these fighters, a large number of them are in the Flying Tiger units. Some of them are in the P-40Es that are flying over Singapore. But at the end of the day, we didn't lose any of our best pilots from a kill perspective. So far this war, we have lost 1 pilot at a level 60 experience, GEG Seago. And we've lost WD Fellock, who was 73 experience, 68 experience V. Sweinbeck, and WJ Christensen, level 63 experience. In terms of like our best pilots that we've lost, actually, if we look at our experience, of the pilots that we've lost, we've lost 3 pilots above 80. We have 3 pilots who are above 80 in this list, but none of them have been lost. We haven't lost anyone higher than a 75, so that's good. We lost 12 pilots killed, 11 wounded in action last turn. And that's kind of the situation there. If we take a look at the ship sunk and we take a look at last turn, we can see here that we sank 1 Japanese ship, the Emigari, where if we click on it, it says it's a Fubuki 2 class destroyer. Its anti-submarine warfare technology is level 4, so this is a very good ship that he just lost. That was the one he was trying to shuttle some troops to the South Pacific in. Again, why would you use your best destroyers in that? I don't know, but hey, I'm happy if he wants to make mistakes and give them to us. Meanwhile, we lost 1 ship of our own, the Bellatrix, an AVP, which is basically just a small sort of tender-type ship of some kind. I think it might be like patrol aircraft ship or something. In any event, only worth 2 victory points. So 8 versus 2 there. Good result for us on the ship sunk world. In terms of aircraft replacement pool, what do we have in pool? I don't think we really have much. The only units we have a lot of aircraft in are the Soviets. We do have actually quite a few Kingfishers, but whatever. We've got a fair number of Dauntlesses also, which is nice. If we ever actually start using our Dauntlesses in combat, we can replace a lot. We're making 14 of them a month, and we've got 36 in storage. More Soviet aircraft, Dutch Catalinas. Actually, that's good to know. We've got 26 of them. New Zealand Vincents, which are, for all you biplane lovers out there, they're basically the Wildebeest. But it only carries a 1,000-pound bomb instead of a torpedo. Some more Dauntlesses, some SBD-2s, Catalinas. Yeah, I don't really see the Buffalo. We've got a reasonable amount in the pool, 14, but we're trying to avoid using the Buffalo in combat. We've got 11 Wildcats. We've got a handful of Fulmer 2s of F2A2 Buffaloes. A few Hurricanes. We got 7 in the pool there, so hopefully that can replace the 12 that we lost, or at least a good chunk of them. And that's the situation right now in the aircraft replacement pool. In the ship availability pool, what do we have coming tomorrow? It looks like we have just 2 ships. The Sumatra will arrive at Surabaya, so a Dutch light cruiser, which actually has a pretty strong anti-aircraft battery of 292 for a light cruiser. It's a pretty solid vessel there, 29 knots, 15-centimeter guns, no torpedoes, which is kind of unfortunate. But she will arrive. I think we actually had her do an upgrade because she's arriving with 20 system damage, so she won't be quite ready for combat. But she'll be there. And then we'll get 1 light cargo ship. So pretty light day in terms of ships coming online for the next day or 2, actually. Ship withdrawals, what's coming up here? I'm just taking a real quick look. Nothing coming up till next month, till the end of next month. I don't think we have any due or overdue. Yeah, so it looks like only 1 ship due next month. And then ground unit withdrawals. Where is the withdrawal in how many days? 24 days, so nothing really coming up there anytime soon. Okay, so whatever. So that's the situation right now. In terms of victory points, we still got almost over 4,000 more than him. But the one thing that you need to remember there is when he starts taking some of these bases, that'll change. To win before the end of 42, though, he has to get 3 times our victory points. And that is quite a lot. He hasn't moved troops into Singapore yet. We still have troops that are here that are digging in to try and improve the fortifications. We're up to 76% on the way to level 4. You can see here our defensive strength is 1,064 in terms of our garrison there. The 11th and 9th Indian Divisions make up the core of our defense. We have a couple of Australian infantry brigades as well that are working on getting a little bit better. I don't know if we set them to rest if their infantry sections become undisorganized more quickly or not. I haven't seen a lot of correlation there or not, but everybody's in combat mode right now. We have quite a bit of supply in Singapore, 46,000, and I think it actually creates a little bit of its own supply with the heavy industry and the light industry as long as you have some resources there, which we do. We've got 144,000 resources here, so it will build a little bit of its own supply, I think. Meanwhile, the situation in Palembang, that's the same as it was before, 30,000 fuel, over 400,000 oil. Nothing we can do to stop the oil buildup. We are loading fuel on some ships that are going to be going back to Perth at Oosthaven. And we can see here that we've got 27,000 fuel still at Oosthaven. I've issued orders for our tankers to avoid Balikpapan because of these Japanese ships near the Banda Sea, and that's probably a wise move. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have the Hermes fall back to Batavia, and we're going to have them fall back to Batavia at flank speed, getting out of there as quickly as they can. They're going to burn a lot of fuel. They're going to take some system damage, but I want to try and get them out of reach of the Japanese carriers, which I believe are right here. These guys are moving southwest, so we're going to sprint in the opposite direction, and if the Japanese want to chase us, I mean, fine. They can definitely beat us back to Batavia, but the good thing is if they do chase us, then they're going to burn a shit ton of fuel, so we're going to go ahead and flank speed both of these units, the land combat unit, or the surface combat unit, and the aircraft. I was toying around with the idea of charging the cruisers in for a decisive battle, but the last time we saw the Kido Butai, it did have battleships with it, and we only have 2 heavy cruisers there, so I don't want to lose those ships to no purpose. We've got the Perch that's on the way. Maybe she can engage with the enemy. We've got a whole bunch of submarines that are trying to screen off this area, but Kendari's lost. He put a division ashore. That's a lot more than 420 troops there. He put a division ashore, and there's not a whole lot we can do to stop that. Most of our fighter pilots here are getting relatively fatigued, so we're actually going to stand down the fighters at this base, and I'm going to assume that he's not going to bomb Mascar. I'm going to assume that he's going to try and go for our ships, so we'll stand our fighters down there and try make sure we don't get them all like destroyed, because there's way more fighters here than we have air aviation support for. So we'll have these guys stand down. They didn't do anything last turn anyway, the darn cowards. If we take a look at the Hermes Air Group, it lost 8 swordfish here. You can see the 814 Squadron is the one that was decimated. They're down to 1 active swordfish. There are no swordfish in the pool to draw replacements from. We could try and switch them over to albacores. We have a fair number of aircraft in pool for that. Those are also biplanes, to all you biplane lovers out there. And we may do that in time, and we may pull the 4th AACU off the carrier as well, because this is a land unit. But in any event, We actually didn't use any of our torpedoes because none of our aircraft made it through. So some weird quirk is it doesn't matter what the planes were loaded up with. If they don't make it to the target, they don't use the torpedoes, even if they're all shot down and don't make it back to the carrier. So that's one good thing, I guess. Anyway, that's the situation here. We're going to have these guys race out of there as quickly as we can. Ships in Surabaya. I mean, I guess we'll have to see if he actually makes an attempt to air raid the base. We don't really have any fighters over the base right now. I think we could remedy that somewhat. Those buffaloes are all worn out. I think we have some fighters at Batavia. We really don't. I don't really want to pull the fighters out of Mascar yet, so I'm going to gamble that he's not going to actually bomb Batavia. We really don't have a ton for him to bomb there anyway. There's a couple of tender ships, but that's about it. So I think we'll leave those things as is for now. What's this FK? That's just a training biplane. What's the L212? That's a bomber. What does that actually carry? 50-kilogram bombs? Well, that won't do anything versus ship. Are these fighters? No, they're not. Okay. Well, that is what it is. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our fighters at Singapore. You can see the air wing here was pretty devastated. We had 100 fighters last turn. We lost over 20. We've only got 79 left, and only 41 of those are ready for combat. The good news is the P-39 Airacobras did not engage, and they are working on getting up to combat readiness. We just swapped out their P-40s for Airacobras, so that's, I guess, the one positive. But in terms of the planes, we're going to get 3 more tomorrow, so we'll be up to 10, but it's going to be up to a week before the entire squadron is actually ready. We'll probably have to commit them to combat before then. The thing is, though, if he really lost 20 zeros, he's probably going to take the day off and he's not going to sweep. Even if he continues to sweep, I don't think he's going to launch bombers, given he lost so many fighters. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to stand everybody down. All the fatigue levels are reasonable. It's 9, 7, 7, 8, 8, 8, 3, 0, 4. But if I stand everybody down, that's going to be a faster way for us to get these aircraft repaired and back into action. If we keep flying these 3 fighters, one of them might be damaged and be out of action tomorrow. If we stand them all down, assuming he doesn't actually bomb the runway, which is certainly a risk, we'll get 4 more Hurricanes repaired tomorrow. And so then we'll rapidly get our strength back up and be able to fling another group of fighters up against him. Meanwhile, it looks like replacements are delayed by a day, so hopefully we get some more Hurricane replacements in tomorrow. It does look like we've got 9 Buffaloes in pool for the New Sea. I thought we had some Hurricanes. I guess the pool, it depends on the nationality of the unit there, because that says no Hurricanes but Buffaloes. This one over here says there are 7 Hurricanes in pool, as well as some Sea Hurricanes. So I guess it depends on the pool, the ethnicity of the actual pilots that are flying. That's kind of a weird quirk, but it is what it is. P-40s, we don't have any in pool. Doesn't look like it. Don't have any fighters, so the planes we lost there are kind of lost for good, at least for now. Yeah. But the Airacobras, those guys are going to start working on getting up and better. And if we do get them all into action, that'll be another 25 fighters that we can use. So that's the situation there. Not a lot else has changed on the Malay Peninsula or in the Dutch East Indies. Not really anything at all we can do against the Japanese here at Kendari. If he does take the base, I'm going to start using the bombers at Balikpapan to bomb Kendari to knock the airfield out, but we can't do that until the base falls. Same for Manadao. Sub-screens are going to stay where they are. Not really going to do anything else out here. Meanwhile, it looks like he has pulled the carriers back. He had them approaching the Torres Strait, but they actually pulled back. This is the Kidu Butai, as far as we can tell. There's at least 3 Japanese carriers here. That are operating between Port Moresby and Cooktown in Australia. They're moving southeast, so they were moving in this direction, chasing some ships of ours. Now they've reversed course, and either they're going to swing wide and go north back to Truk to refuel, or they're going to head back into the Coral Sea to ravage more shipping. Good news for us, there's no shipping there, so, have fun ravaging nothing. This tanker's running to Sydney. These troops at Nomaya, if they attack again, they're a goner. We only have 13 assault value. These squads are being obliterated. There are no hope. The only hope that we have really is that he pauses for a turn to regroup some of his exhaustion and his own troops' disorganization. But you can see here very little in the way of troops. 661 infantry remain, 4,122 support troops, just a handful of assault value. Level 1 forts, so we did rebuild the forts there, but his strength is much larger than our own. Can't get those aircraft out because they're all damaged, and it is what it is. Meanwhile, we've got some destroyers here that are operating ASW on Norfolk Island, and we'll keep them there mainly in case he tries one of those destroyer end runs. We have some destroyers on the way to Lord Howe Island. I'm actually going to speed them up and get them there as quickly as we can. Again, in the event that he has some ships nearby, we want to make sure that that he isn't sneaking in and taking a island that we really can't afford to lose at this stage. So we'll go ahead and we'll sprint those 3 destroyers in. Our heavy cruisers, which engaged in that battle, are actually going to change down to slow speed, and then we're going to go ahead and send them over in this direction, just in the event, again, he tries to go after either of these islands. If we get some recon on enemy shipping in the area, we can we're transposed between the two, and we can sprint forward. Does look like we used a reasonable amount of ammunition here, but not a ton. I mean, we're in really good shape ammo-wise for these ships, so they're ready to sail. Meanwhile, looks like we've got some ships unloading at Melbourne. We've got a bunch of fuel on some tankers that's coming off there. We'll disband that guy in that port. Additionally, we have these oilers are headed toward Melbourne with 8,000 oil. Melbourne is, I think, the only base that actually has oil refineries. And then we're unloading another 5,000 fuel here at Perth. It looks like this other tanker completed unloading. We're going to send it up to Oosthaven. We just need to make sure that we take a wide enough berth from Java that he doesn't intercept our tankers. I think, for the moment, that might be safe. You can see here we got a bunch of tankers in this area over here. These guys are going back to Australia at Geraldtown. I don't know if they're going to make it. Looks like they might. They should get very close to making it. Any detection value on them? No. These guys are going up to Oosthaven. No detection value on them, so he has no idea they're there. Same for these tankers going to Oosthaven. These tankers going to Oosthaven. These tankers going to Tijilap. And these tankers going to Perth. So these guys have already loaded up with 26,000 fuel, and they're headed back to Australia. Again, we're mainly powering the Australian economy out of the Dutch East Indies, so that's one positive thing, I guess. And that's the situation right now here. Meanwhile, Balikpapan, we should probably turn off the oil refinery if we haven't already. Oh, we already did. So that's good. Yeah, so he's getting his teeth into Celebs. We'll see if he takes the island this turn or not. Meanwhile, if we move north, we can see here we've got a ship on its way to Bataan with about 600 supplies. We're going to go ahead and flank speed it in. Its base will be Bataan, so we'll see if we'll get it in. We do. It should get there this turn. They can reload their fuel there because Bataan has 4,000 fuel, and we'll see if we can get another 600 supplies unloaded at Bataan. You can see there's 48,000 supplies all told at Bataan, and so we're working on continuing to bring the flow of supplies in. Meanwhile, a large number of our troops in Bataan are resting and trying to get up to speed. You can see our assault values at 1,800. We've got level 4 forts. We're not using supply up by building bigger forts. We're husbanding our resources to make sure that we can hold there as long as possible. He has 14 units, 354 guns, 245 assault value, and 53,000 troops at Manila. He's obviously pulled some troops out of the Philippine campaign because we've seen divisions operating elsewhere that probably were pulled from here. But I don't think if he's got that many troops and with as good of ground as Clark Field is, we have any feasible way to counterattack him there. We just have to try and make sure that we force him to leave probably 2 to 3 full divisions on the island of Luzon until Bataan falls. And at the rate he's going, with his willingness to allow us to resupply Bataan continuously, I'm hoping we can keep this base through April or maybe even into May if he doesn't make a serious push there. Meanwhile, if we look north, we can see here there's some Japanese troops in southern China. They could threaten the rail line in any direction. But for the moment, anyhow, we've got troops in both of these bases. I'm actually going to move this guy. He made some comments about like flanking me and cutting off Changsha. So I'm actually moving these guys a little bit west. Meanwhile, we're also going to go ahead and change these guys over to a deliberate attack to see if we can drive back this Japanese division here. There is a Japanese division that we've already driven back here just near Changsha. We're going to see if we can drive it back into Changsha and then maybe even use this large force here to the south of Changsha to threaten his flank and advance north here. We wouldn't have any real direct supply line there, so that would be a problem, but maybe we'd move a small force astride his supply line there. I'm not really sure. North China, nothing's really changed. Nobody's really moved. He's not really anywhere near Siam yet. He's still over like 200 miles, 300 miles away, and we've got a large force between his main force and Siam, although we did have some intelligence that indicated he might be moving there. Also looks like we do have some supply issues. We are ordering these guys to fall back, though, so they should make it to the next hex in the next turn, and then pull one away from Luoyang. Ooh, that's a lot of talking and not a ton of time. This is mainly an overview turn. I don't have a ton of orders to issue this turn, in all honesty. Most of what I'm doing is already in action. We're pulling back those cruisers and those carrier. But other than that, there's not a lot to adjust this turn. We're bringing our own forces around here. We're moving the British carrier here is south onto the map. Is it? Where is it? It is in the vicinity, isn't it? We just got a new British carrier. I'm trying to remember where she is. Did she make it all the way to Colombo? No? Where is she? Where is she, my mates? Where is she? Oh, that's a tanker. There is another British carrier around here somewhere. Indomitable. Where are you, Indomitable? You are Task Force 93. Oh, so you're still off the coast of India. So you're working your way south toward Colombo with the Royal Sovereign and the Indomitable. Meanwhile, we got some ships here. I think most of these guys are already loading. So we're loading up 40,000 plus fuel. Have to disband these guys, but we've got over 40,000 fuel being loaded onto these two cargo task forces, both of which are going to go into India. They're merchant ships, so they're not very efficient at moving fuel. But they can do it nonetheless, and bringing fuel into Karachi. Meanwhile, we've got tankers all at Karachi right now, unloading fuel, and you can see here this is going to power the Indian economy, which will make sure that we are able to resist the Japanese effectively in India. Meanwhile, I don't think anything had changed here. We did have one unit start moving south from Chittagong, the 63rd Indian Brigade and 254th Armored Brigade. So they're starting to move south toward Rangoon. He does have one unit here interposed between Molman and Pegu. I do plan to strike out at that eventually, but I am trying to get some consolidation of some of our forces in the area so that we have a better chance of dealing those troops a bit of a blow. We're going to build another Indian division down here near Rangoon, and then we'll probably go after whatever that force is there. I thought our B-17s were all stood down, but it did say that we had one B-17 that was lost last turn. These guys are set to supply, I guess, so they must have been running some supply. I think we'll go ahead and stand these guys down. Where are they running supply to anyway? Running supply toward Kunming. So they're running supply over here into China. Didn't bring a ton, but they brought some into China. Meanwhile, I've got 45,000 supply at Rangoon. We've got supply on the way. We've got merchant convoys moving back to off-map areas to bring in an Australian division to bring it down to Australia. An Australian division to Australia. Send them home. And then I think we've got some ships. Not really. These merchant ships haven't really arrived yet. Did we pull that 2nd Canadian Battalion out? We did. Okay, so this guy here, the Barnett, has pulled a 2nd Australian Battalion out of Victoria, and now we just need to send him to Cole Harbour, where there's the final battalion in a Canadian division, which is going to go back there. He'll pick them up, and then he'll transport them. Is it to Tacoma or Seattle? Where are the Canadian troops? They must be Seattle. Yep, the Edmonton Fusiliers and the Brockville Rifles. So we'll bring down the one remaining unit in their brigade, the 2nd Canadian Scottish Battalion. Canadian and Scottish in the same unit? And then they'll form the 15th Australian or Canadian Division or Brigade, and then they'll move to San Diego to load on troop transports. Meanwhile, a bunch of anti-aircraft and coastal defense units are in San Diego. We don't have a ton of infantry strength there, actually basically none, but there is a bunch that is railing there. There's 2 infantry regiments that are on the way there. Also, I think we have a troop transport that's on the way to Norfolk Island. Somewhere around here. Over here. So we've got the Combat Infantry Regiment on the way to Norfolk Island, which I think is the most crucially located island between New Caledonia and New Zealand. It's also the most built up. It's already a level 2 port, or level nothing port. Well, how the hell am I going to expand the port if I can't have a port here? It doesn't even give me the option to expand the port. How does that make sense? How are you going to bring any supplies or fuel in there? Maybe we need to move it to Lord Howe Island. I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Or maybe just Raoul Island, and that'll act as kind of a gatekeeper to New Zealand. I'm not really sure. We'll have to look at that when it gets closer. Meanwhile, the only other thing I guess I'd say is the American carriers are south of Pearl Harbor, over here. And we're moving them toward New Zealand, where they can interpose any Japanese attacks east or west if they move the Kido-Butai away from the region. But for the moment, anyway, they're just transporting themselves. I won't operate them in one task force because that's a bad idea because of the way the game mechanics work. But we're just transporting ourselves with no real risk here. There's no detection over them or anything like that. In terms of merchant shipping, we're going to go ahead and disband these 3 here. That gives us how many? 5 AKLs. These guys arrive in 14. These arrive in 37. And then if we want to take a look at our British battleships, kind of the last thing probably for this turn, we've got the British battlecruiser Repulse is repairing in Cape Town, 101 days, so a little bit over 3 more months till she's done. The Prince of Wales is not there yet. The Prince of Wales is on the way. I think this is it. It is. It's at 51 float damage, 38 engine, 18 systems. It can make 9 knots, and it is about how many more days away? Can't even do the math. 14 days until it moves to the map. So I'm not going to risk flank speeding it and taking more damage. It'll just arrive in 14 days. And then we've got some other units that are on their way to Cape Town from the U.S. We've got 60,000 fuel on one, 13,000 fuel in another, and 7,000 fuel from another. So just shy of 80,000 fuels on the way to Cape Town, because you can see the fuel level is way low because we've been pulling fuel out of Cape Town for the various task forces operating out of there. But Cape Town doesn't generate a lot of fuel, so that's a thing to be aware of. With that being said, I think that about does it for this turn. I know I didn't actually make a lot of orders or changes, but I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now, other than the fact that we're standing down our fighters at Singapore and we're racing our warships away. So that's going to do it for this episode. Guys in the chat, bear with me a minute. I'll check in with the chat in a sec. But for the purpose of the video on demand that is going on YouTube, as always, guys, I appreciate you tuning in for yet another episode. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.